Hi there, I'm Georgie, the Sourdough Mumma, and I just want to talk to you about baking tools that I use every day in the kitchen when I'm making bread. Yes, I pretty much make bread every day. I'm slightly addicted to make my life easier in the kitchen. So if you are committed to this sourdough journey and you love it as much as I do, these things will really help you out to make things quicker, more efficient, get the loaf as beautiful as possible. So the first thing I use when I'm mixing my dough, this is your best friend. This is a dough hook or a Danish hook, or they call it a Danish whisk or a dough whisk. This really, especially with gluten-free, really helps you get in there and get all those dry bits into the wet mix. And then you don't have it all over your hands. It's a quicker process. There's nothing worse than having half the loaf on your hands and then trying to drag it off when you're busy and trying to get out the door. So dough hook, new best friend. I also love a good bench scraper. I use this to shape my loaf, especially if my hands, are hurting, like got a bit of arthritis, and I've done a lot with my hands. Doing this can sometimes hurt, then I often just shape it with this. I can move my dough around on the bench everywhere. If the dough is really sticky, then I'm not fighting the dough, I'm just lifting it up with this and not struggling with my hand. So bench scraper is a must for me. I always take the temperature of my bread, even though I've been making it for years. I take the temperature of every single loaf religiously because I just want the best crumb inside and the best outcome. A milk thermometer, or I think they call it a milk frothing thermometer or a candy thermometer. You could use a meat thermometer if you have a meat thermometer at home. Just some of those go up really high to like 500, so make sure you can see that 95 to 100 really well. Maybe mark it with a marker. But these definitely well worth it, especially if you don't know your oven very well and you don't know if it bakes hot or cold or even. These little guys, I just adore them so much. This is a UFO lame. This is for scoring beautifully because even though sharp knives in the kitchen are very sharp, they're much thicker than a razor blade. And so when you're trying to score with a knife, you're dragging the dough and you can't do those beautiful mandala patterns on your dough, but also you're dragging the dough and popping all the beautiful air bubbles in there that we've created with the Sourdough Starter. So I use this guy religiously. I never use a knife. To proof my bread, I use bannetons. You will often see these in cane. I do not love the cane ones, and I'll tell you why. I'm in Queensland in Australia, and we have a lot of hot heat and they go moldy because I've got wet dough sitting in them in the fridge overnight for 12 hours and then I'm pulling it out and it's still wet and condensated and then mold grows on them. My girlfriend, who's a genius, who happens to live on the Sunshine Coast and owned a bakery, designed these specifically because they were so sick of having the moldy cane issue. These are much more convenient, these are much more food safe, I guess, and you can chuck them in the dishwasher. They're much more hardy, like I'm pressing quite hard on that. And I just love the shapes. The round's romantic, the loaf is pretty practical. I make both all the time. They've also got these beautiful aeration slats here so that your dough can proof in the fridge and it's not being suffocated by just being in a bowl, and it won't condensate, it'll just rise evenly so that you've got beautiful crumb inside. If you are a bit sick of buying baking paper because it is fairly expensive and you don't love chucking it away, you can buy these silicone mats. These only come, as far as I know and have online, in the round shape. So I put this on there, tip my dough up rather than use baking paper. And then these long bits are really awesome for when you're trying to pull your dough in and out and you don't want to burn your arms, because I have multiple scars on me. So these are really cool, good for the environment, great to chuck in the dishwasher, easy to use. And lastly, I use our beautiful bread bow knife to cut my bread once it's cooled down. The reason a bread knife I think is really important is because it gives you an even slice. So do you see, I don't even know how it works, I'm not that clever, but this basically acts like a bread slicer does in the bakeries without the machinery behind it. And I don't know why it works, but it's genius. So in between here, you put this on your bread wherever you want the slice to be, thick or thin, and just start cutting down, and somehow it just keeps your bread nice and even. Because when I try to do it with any other kitchen knives, as I'm sure you have, you just get this slope and this slope and this slope, and then you get the thick bit and the thin bit on top, and then the thick bit doesn't fit in the toaster, and you're forever trying to even out this loaf, and by the end you still haven't evened it out, and it really, really annoys the crap out of you. So these don't do that. These make your life pleasant. If you want to see how this is used, check out my video on how to use a bread bow knife properly. So that's it. That's all the tools I use. Once I purchased these, I have not bought any more for a very long time because this suffices what I'm doing with bread in the kitchen. So I bought these, it made my life better, and now I'm getting on with my bread life.